The autumn air was crisp as I wound my way through the Smoky Mountains, the October 2024 sun casting golden rays over the rolling hills. My old pickup hummed along the narrow roads, carrying me toward my family's cabin on Willow Lochia Place that wasn't just wood and nails, but a living piece of my grandfather's soul. He'd built it in the 1960s, his calloused hands shaping every beam, and it was where I'd learned what it meant to be a man. Work hard, stand tall, keep your word. I was Ethan Caldwell, a former coder turned construction manager, wired to solve problems with logic and proof. This weekend was supposed to be my escape: 3 days of staining the deck, fixing the creaky porch swing, and soaking in the quiet. But as I pulled into the gravel driveway, I had no idea I was about to step into a storm that'd test everything I believed in. I'd barely popped the trunk to unload my groceries when a woman materialized like a hawk swooping down. She was maybe 50, with a razor-sharp bob and a navy blazer sporting the Willow Lake Homeowners Association crest. This was Margaret Hensley, president of the HOA, radiating the kind of authority that could make a grown man second-guess his own name. Her eyes locked on my grocery bags, and before I could say a word, she bellowed, "You stole my groceries, and I'm calling the cops." It wasn't a question, it was a verdict. She stood 3 feet from my truck, phone already recording, her voice slicing through the still lake air. Neighbors peeked from their cabins, drawn to the commotion like it was a reality show. A wiry guy in a flannel shirt, her apparent sidekick, slunk out from the cabin next door, scribbling my license plate in a notebook. This wasn't a random outburst, it was a setup. I tried to keep my cool, stepping out of the truck with my hands raised like I was calming a spooked horse. "Ma'am, I'm Ethan Caldwell. My family owns this cabin. I don't know what you're talking about, but I've got a receipt for these groceries." My voice was steady, but inside, my pulse was racing. Margaret wasn't having it. "Don't play dumb," she snapped, her phone's red light glaring like a predator's eye. "Those are my groceries, same brands, same bags, stolen from Harper's Market this morning." The accusation hit like a sledgehammer. I'd bought those groceries myself 2 hours ago, but she was painting me as a thief in front of a growing crowd. Curtains twitched, faces pressed against windows, and I felt my reputation crumbling faster than a dry sandcastle. My construction manager instincts kicked in: document everything, stay calm, stick to facts. "There's a misunderstanding," I said, reaching for my wallet. "I have the receipt right here." But Margaret's voice climbed to a shriek. "I'm the HOA president, and I don't tolerate thieves. I saw you take my card at Harper's." She was close enough now that I caught a whiff of her lavender perfume, cloying against the fresh mountain air. Her sidekick loomed behind her, arms crossed, and the crowd's whispers grew louder. "Always seemed so quiet," one muttered. "You never really know people," said another. Margaret dialed 911 with the precision of someone who'd done this before, her voice trembling with theatrical outrage as she told the dispatcher, "There's a man here who stole my groceries and got aggressive when I confronted him." Sheriff Dan Harper arrived, his patrol car's lights flashing red and blue against the lake's glassy surface. He was a grizzled man in his late 50s, moving with the slow deliberation of someone who'd seen it all. Margaret launched into her story again, tears welling up as she described leaving her cart for just a moment at Harper's, only to return and find it gone. The crowd ate it up: Mrs. Larson from the Green Cabin, the Thompsons with their kids, even old Mr. Ellis, who rarely left his porch. Worse, 16-year-old Jake Thompson was filming, his phone poised to turn my humiliation into viral content. I handed Sheriff Harper my receipt, a crumpled lifeline with a timestamp, 10:42 a.m. But before he could study it, Margaret snatched it, glanced for a split second, and tossed it to the ground. "Fake," she declared. "Anyone with a printer can whip that up." The crowd gasped, and I felt the air shift. She wasn't just accusing me of theft, she was framing me as a master criminal. Sheriff Harper picked up the receipt, his eyes narrowing as he noted the store's watermark and cashier's initials. "This looks legit, ma'am," he said, but Margaret was ready. "Oh, please. He's a tech guy, probably hacked the store's system to cover his tracks." Her conspiracy grew wilder by the second, and I saw doubt flicker in the sheriff's eyes. He bagged the receipt as evidence and said he'd check Harper's security cameras. As he drove off, I retreated to the cabin, my sanctuary now tainted by suspicion. That night, a note slid under my door. Thieves don't belong at Willow Lake. Get out. My hands shook as I sat in my grandfather's old armchair, the weight of the day pressing down. This wasn't about groceries, Anna Maria. It was about my honor, my family's legacy, and whether I'd let a liar burn it all down. By dawn, I was in my truck, driving to Harper's Market with a fire in my gut. The store was a small-town haven, where cashiers knew your name and nobody treated you like a crook. The manager, Lisa, greeted me with a smile that faded as I explained the nightmare. Her eyes darkened when I mentioned Margaret Hensley. Oh, her, she sighed. She had our cashier in tears last Saturday. Lisa led me to a back office, where security monitors hummed. We pulled up the footage from 10 to 11 a.m., and there was Margaret, in her HOA blazer, tearing into a teenage cashier over a scanning error. Her face was flushed, her gestures wild, and the poor girl looked ready to bolt. Then, the bombshell. At 10:18 a.m., Margaret stormed out, leaving her card in aisle 5, a pile of organic veggies and artisanal bread abandoned like trash. A store employee waited, then wheeled it to customer service. At 10:42 a.m., there I was, checking out at Register 3, loading my own bags, oblivious to the drama. At 11:03 a.m., Margaret marched back in, yelling at the customer service desk, then left empty-handed, her face a mask of fury. Lisa burned the footage onto a USB drive, and I signed the paperwork, clutching the evidence like a winning lottery ticket. But as I drove back to Willow Lake, I knew proof alone wouldn't undo Margaret's poison. She'd already posted in the HOA's private Facebook group a 500-word manifesto calling me a deceptive outsider who'd faked evidence to dodge justice. The comments were brutal, always seemed shady. We need to protect our community. The Thompsons aimed a new security camera at my cabin. Mrs. Larson, who'd once gifted me blueberry muffins, now glared like I'd robbed her. Flyers appeared on bulletin boards. Lock your doors. Report suspicious activity. My name wasn't on them, but the message was clear. The HOA called a meeting for Thursday, October 10th, at 7 p.m., and I spent the week preparing. I emailed Margaret and the board, offering the footage to clear things up, but her response was a digital Molotov cocktail, accusing me of tech-savvy manipulation. The meeting felt like a trial, the community center packed with neighbors who'd once been friends. Margaret stood at the front, her presentation a masterpiece of lies. Photos of my truck, close-ups of my grocery bags, a timeline pinning me as the thief. Ethan Caldwell thinks he can fool us with fake footage, she said, her voice dripping with scorn. But we're smarter than that. The crowd nodded, their eyes boring into me. When I stood to speak, jeers erupted, liar. Show us your fake video, and I felt the noose tightening. I was ready to walk away, to pack my bags and leave Willow Lake forever, when the back doors swung open. Walter Grayson, 80 years old, stepped inside, his flannel shirt crisp, his notebook clutched like a Bible. Walter was a retired Navy accountant, a Willow Lake legend who'd buried his wife a decade ago and never raised his voice. His presence silenced the room. Before you string this man up, he said, his Georgia drawl steady, you might want to hear what I saw at Harper's last Saturday. He opened his notebook, pages filled with neat handwriting. I shop there every week, 10:15 a.m., same as always. Saw Margaret Hensley rip into a cashier like she was settling a blood feud. Saw her storm out, leaving her card in aisle 5. Saw Ethan checking out with his own groceries, minding his own business. And I saw Margaret come back, yelling at the staff for her own mistake. The room froze, faces shifting from anger to doubt. Margaret tried to interrupt Mr. Grayson, your memory isn't what it used to be. But her attack backfired. Walter's eyes flashed. I've never been called a liar, ma'am, and I won't start now. The crowd turned, their glares now aimed at her. The final meeting came the next Tuesday, and the air crackled with tension. Margaret tried to rally, her speech a desperate plea to see through Ethan's lies, but the crowd was restless, skeptical. I connected my laptop to the projector, my slides simple and brutal. First, my receipt, timestamp 10:42 a.m. Then, my truck's dashcam, showing me loading my bags. Finally, Harper's footage, Margaret's meltdown, her abandoned cart, my checkout, her furious return. Each frame was a nail in her coffin. No one stole anything, I said, staring at her. Margaret forgot her groceries and blamed me to save face. The room was silent, her face ashen. Neighbors deleted their posts, whispered apologies, and filed out, shooting Margaret looks of disgust. By Friday, her name was gone from the HOA board. Her reign over Willow Lake ended not with a bang, but a whimper. As I sat on the cabin porch, coffee in hand, watching the sun rise over the lake, I felt whole again. I'd fixed something broken, just like my grandfather taught men at the deck or the swing, but my name, my place in this world. The truth had won, loud and clear, and Margaret's lies had crumbled like ash. But as I sipped my coffee, questions lingered, sharp and urgent. What drives someone to destroy another's life over a mistake? How far would you go to protect your reputation? And in a world where lies spread faster than truth, can we ever trust what we're told? Drop your thoughts below. Have you faced a Margaret Hensley? How'd you fight back? Like, comment, and subscribe for more stories that dig into the messy truth of being human.